All right, we will get started soon. We'll just wait for a few more people. Thanks everybody for joining us. You can see our three presenters are here. Say hi to Marie, Carson,
Hello.
Francesco.
Hello.
Right. Okay, just let me do one more thing here.
Yeah.
Okay, so thanks everyone for joining us, and sorry that we are 5 minutes late here. We promised to make it up to you. I'm really excited to be joined with Marie, Carson, and Francesco, and the three things that, or the one thing that we know we all have in common already is that we just love talking about Notion, and I think a lot of us even do this in our spare time. So it's great that we can talk to a captive audience, because I know for me, I usually talk to my friends about it and they would rather not have me talk about it. So the fact that you're opting in is really cool. Here is the rundown for today. We're going to jump in pretty quickly, and Francesco will be sharing for us first. And we'll always give 5 minutes after each tour to field some questions and answers. Marie will be going next, then Carson, and then if we have time at the end, we'll do a little bit more Q&A. All right. So the best way to ask questions today is in the Q&A at the bottom of your Zoom window. If you can just submit a question there, my friend Nicole is sitting back here and she's going to watch those for us and kind of monitor the chat too. And we would love to promise that we can answer all of your questions and make all of your wildest dreams come true, but we probably won't be able to. We only have an hour. So if there's a lot of questions that come up over and over and over, we'll answer those in the recap that we send out via email later. Also, just so you know, we're not, the four of us, we're not employees of Notion, so we won't be able to help with like feature requests or things like that. But Notion has a great new help site. I believe it's notion.so/help. So if you ever need any help about specific things, we heard that they just uploaded like 500 plus GIFs and videos for you to check out. So there's always help there. All right. I think that is all the housekeeping questions I have. So we will turn it over to Francesco if you're ready.
Yeah. Sure. Well, thanks off first of all to Steph and you guys for organizing it, because like all these sort of Notion meetups, these community sort of events online, like they're really helping across the board. And it's so good to get like all these different angles on Notion, because it's really hard when you get a Notion account when you start, because there's so much you can do, and it's quite scary at the start, but equally when we've got so many voices, it just brings a great community together. And I was reading the chat at the start, and people mentioning about their other halves and friends getting annoyed at them. Oh, I know what they're talking about. Yeah, I was going to share my sort of Notion setup with you guys. What I wanted to do is pick out two particular pages that I've got. So, I think I need sharing access for screenshots, if that helps.
Yeah. I think let me see if I made you host. Yeah.
Lovely jubbly. Fantastic. Yep. So there we go. Share Notion. So can everyone see my screen? Is that all looking all right? Lovely jubbly. Right, okay. Oh, brilliant. I can see everyone in the chat mentioning it now. So yeah, I wanted to touch on two of the setups I got. So I've done a bit of a longer tour separately on YouTube, but I've got two main Notion accounts, and that is my own personal one, and one that we use at Keep Productive for organizing content. And I'll share these links after with you, Steph, if anybody wants to copy them, although it's some of them are already in the templates area, which are really great. They continue to build that resource. It's fantastic. So this is our Keep Productive base. We mainly use it to organize our sort of team efforts. So I want to show you one that I use for my personal account and one that I use for the team. The first one's called Projections, and it's part of my finance area. So if I go to my own area, you should see a finance planner in there. And I use this to sort of project some of my upcoming not upcoming expenses, but my goals and sort of targets for the end of the month for each account that I have. It's just a really simple process that I do each week and check in. So the actual Notion page is called Projections, and what you can see here is it's just a very simple gallery in line. And what I've done is I've gone ahead and created a template, and I'll go inside that template for you and press edit in there. So the template's really, really simple. It's just something that starts off with a goal and month. So whenever I copy it, I obviously change that month, and we'll actually demonstrate that. And then it's really simple with the property types area. It's got an area called themes. So each month with the finances, I try to have a theme. It could be saving hard. It could be reducing expenses, or even something particular. So what I'm aiming to do is have that theme and sort of title the theme every month. Then down here, I just have a very simple table that has the account that I'm trying to zoom in here if I can. There we go. The account that I'm running, the type of account that it is, whether it's a savings account or regular account, how much money I've got in it, and the goal at the end of the month. And then a very simple formula for how much I need to get to that goal. So it's really simple. Every time I enter it, actually we'll go back and we'll go ahead and press this template button. So obviously that goes ahead and creates a brand new card here inside of the gallery in line. And what I'll do is I'll say goal July 2019. I'll set a theme, and that could be build personal account. It could be absolutely anything, but normally I have anything from savings to all that sort of stuff. Every month, you really want to be a saving month, right? So I put here, this is my personal account, and the type of account, it's not a savings account, it's a current account. So I'll enter that there. Then what I'll do is I'll add the £1,000, let's say, that is currently in there, and then maybe I want to save 1,250. And then the formula that is created, that I'll just edit here, is just very simply the property type of current minus the property type of goal. So it's just 1,000 take away 1,250. So in this case, it looks like I need to save £250 to get to my target at the end of the month. So what I'll typically do is I'll just pretty much line out maybe 5 or 6 accounts, and that helps me to just keep an eye on what I'm sort of aiming for and expenses and stuff like that. That's just one of my very basic uses of the finance side of stuff, and that really benefit me, and particularly inside of Notion. So I will show you another area that we use as a team. This might be useful for any of the teams out there looking to use it in a small group for planning the editorial calendar side of stuff. So if you're looking to create content. So this is really, really simple, actually. So Alice, who works at Keep Productive, she does a lot of the fantastic blogs that we write. And so for example, what happens is normally I brief her with a fair few articles, and what I'll do is I'll add them here. So we add the title of it, the topic, and we have a status for each of these. So it's a very simple table, but you can see the status is draft, to check, and that's normally for me, and scheduled. And that gives a bit of an indication of what we got coming up. So we can add them all to these property types here. Then we add what type of article is it. For example, is it a weekly article or a one-off? And of course, who it's assigned to, because we have a few other people on the blog team. Then what I'll do is I'll tend to write her a little message. Of course, I could use comments here, but in this case, it's just me and her. So I pretty much write out the brief for the article. This is actually probably not a good one to be talking about in the Notion webinar that we got, alternatives to Notion. But but these are all the sort of links that we have, and we'll share that. And she gets all of the good stuff. And then we have a release date. The one thing that I have set up here that is quite helpful is a filter. So for example, once the final tick box is actually ticked off, it means that the article is done and it will disappear. So for example, actually know that this one, actually the goal tracker is done now because it's scheduled. So all I have to do is press that one and it disappears. And this is almost like an archive system that is just a really simple process. And if I want to see any of the completed articles to date, I can go back and have that unticked and see all the articles. Maybe I could resurface them or anything like that. So that's a really helpful little process that we have to keep this clean. We used to actually have an old editorial calendar, and as you can see, it got out of hand because we weren't actually getting rid of the existing articles that were there. So a small little habit like that has changed the way that we've done it, at least. And now that's our process for organizing any blog posts and things like that. So yeah, the only other thing I would like to say is obviously that my setup is mainly based off Kylie Stewart's setup. She's a really fantastic, she does JavaScript development, but she has an amazing Notion setup. And a lot of my setup was inspired by her. So I recommend definitely checking her content out. Yeah, that's pretty much the two areas I wanted to mention. So yeah, guess there's questions now, isn't it?
Great. We love it. We're always inspired by how you set it up. And I binge watch your videos on take notes. So thank you.
It's hard to get away from them, isn't
it? Exactly. So Francesco, and maybe Carson and Marie, if you want to jump in on this one too, one of the questions that came in is, it's a good question from Nate, and he's wondering, how do you avoid the overwhelm of Notion when there's just so many options available in Notion?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Carson, do you want to go first?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually have two things that you can look at, Nate. The first is that the template galleries that the Notion team themselves have been putting out have been mostly inspired by people such as Francesco and Kylie sharing their setups. And so I think one thing that's really important, and I'll get into this when I go through my tour, is think about how you want to use Notion first. It is a tool at the end of the day, and so you need to be careful not to throw the tool at the wrong problem. So when getting started, think about what are you trying to achieve and what's your objective, and look through those template guides to try to make that outcome come to be. So that's one way to get started. When you get to a point where you have these really big editorial calendars like Francesco just shared, and I'll demo through this myself, maybe Maria also will, but you can make use of creating separate links to that table, and so you can distill that table, filter down to the state that's only relevant to the people that need to see it. That way they don't see the ugly mess that's behind, that's everything stored all together. But yeah, so look for those templates, and then we'll dive into how to do inline templated tables, or inline linked tables, which are really helpful.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Yeah, sorry, Marie, go on.
I was just going to add too, what my setup looks like today is so different than what it looked like 6, 7, 8 months ago. And so it's so easy to move data around in Notion that I think don't don't worry about getting it right the first time. I think you almost have to play with the data a little bit and say, actually, you know what, I prefer the gallery view, or I prefer a Kanban board, or I prefer, I need a page that has more flexibility. And the beauty is you can drag things around quite easily, and it's not like your data is ruined, or it's not even like Dropbox where everything needs to sync. It can move very, very quickly. So I think give yourself room to play as you're figuring out, like Carson said, what do I need it to do? And then if that's not working, you can always switch it up and play around with it.
Yeah, that's it. I think when you say like there wasn't, when people about a year ago started, there wasn't templates available. So it's become a lot easier to actually get started. And if you are a newbie, I'd recommend just like having a deep dive in templates, because it will save you a hideous amount of time. And the other thing is that sometimes if you're having like a struggle visually trying to plan it, especially because you're like doing it there and then, is just get a piece of A4 paper and just actually doing a sitemap or like a general structure of what you want it to look like, and almost just do arrows coming off of the pages that would be relevant. And sometimes that just helps with like a bird's eye view of the entire Notion setup that you might have. But yeah, there's so many great ways of doing it. But of course, like Marie said, it takes time. So yeah.
Yeah, and actually, speaking of time, someone asked, JS asked Francesco, how long did it take you to like put maybe one simple setup together? And do a low number so we don't scare them forever.
Yeah. That's a good point. I normally go through like 3-month stages of iterations. I think Carly does the same as well when I was chatting with her last. It's normally like, I normally just bank all of my ideas to do in one big rush. And if there's anything smaller, I try and dedicate maybe 10 minutes every week to fixing it. Maybe I'm the bad person to talk to, because I like to leave stuff over a longer period of time versus like fixing it there and then. But it really depends on what type of person you are, I think. If you want to fix it, fix it. If not, do 3-month batches.
Great question. And then we might have to move on to Marie, but someone's wondering why you gave no love to a Kanban, to a board view. I believe when you were talking about your editorial calendar, do you have a preference?
What do you mean, like using the gallery view instead of the board view in that one, or
instead of maybe I am referencing the wrong example, but he's wondering, yeah, in the editorial calendar, did you have a Kanban view? I can't remember.
No, we use a table view, but we now also use a calendar view with it, so it does help to see everything.
All right, good. Yeah. Again, so many options.
That's it.
All right, thanks. Thank you so much, and thank you guys for answering those questions. We probably need to move on to Marie. So if you could just turn over the host to me, Francesco.
Oh yeah, okay, sure.
Or to Marie if you'd like.
Oh yeah, I can go straight to Marie.
Yeah.
Make host. There we go. I think that's with you.
So much power. Okay. There we go. See my screen?
You're good.
Awesome. Just move this out of the way. Awesome. So this is, what I'll do is kind of give an overview of the way that I sort of organize it and use it, and then I can dive deeper into a couple specific use cases. And Steph, feel free to jump in if there was something that you wanted to see in more detail. But this is basically my dashboard, and my setup relies heavily on Tiago Forte's PARA method of organizing content, which is projects, areas, resources, and archives. And so I've adapted mine a little bit, because I do have, I run a company with my partner, so Okie Dokie is kind of our areas I'll just kind of click in here so you can see there's our life and business are very much intertwined. So all of our setups are kind of nested in here as this sort of areas dashboard. But pretty much on a daily basis, I'm kind of jumping into my dashboard, which has quick links. It's got my weekly agenda. I probably spend the most time inside of my weekly agenda. Lots of templates for all this stuff. I sort of pull my projects into here. I pull my tasks in here as well. And so these are all embedded databases that live elsewhere as well. One of my favorite uses is the daily journal. And I embed these within other parts of Notion too. So everything's kind of interconnected, and you'll probably, get a sense of that when you see my weekly planner. But I basically have this, these templates set up for my journal. And so I can see at a glance, like, what does my life look like? How did I feel? I have 3 words that represent the day. I give it a rating. I even connect to relational database to my meal planning, so I can see I ate the Buddha bowls that day and blueberry overnight oats and stuff. So everything's really well tied together. There's some personal data in here too, so I won't necessarily jump right in. But I'll show you, like, here's an example of what that template looks like for me. So if I want to track the meals, I can actually go in and say, oh, cheesy vegan cashew cream sauce, and you can track whatever you want to track. I like to track my effectiveness. Did I feel really productive today? What are some words that represent how I'm feeling? And I can quickly, plug those in. And that's become kind of a daily habit for me, that I really enjoy being able to, I'm a very visual person, so I like being able to kind of see this stuff at a glance. So I'm going to go into my weekly agenda. This one is a template. So if I just want to start from scratch, I'll come here, new weekly agenda, and then I jump into the specific week. I'll just show you a blank one so you can kind of see what that looks like. Pretty simple. I've got some, like, add a new work event, add a personal event, and every Sunday I'll drag these in and kind of plan where all the meetings are, plug them in here. I know that I want to add a journal entry every day, so I can quickly click on that. It takes me right back to my journal. Very easy. I track when I publish content. My tasks are embedded here as well. Visit the plant store, and I can open this up. And because we also run a software too, we have a lot of things like feature requests and how many votes are there for that kind of feature. So it needed to work for both Ben and I to be able to track, many different types of tasks. And so basically we have this master task database that has every task across personal and business, and then we embed that in different ways in our different workspaces, and that has worked really well for us. I think that was kind of the missing piece of, like, managing your to-dos across all of these different spaces. For us, having at least one master task database. I rarely go in there. It's like a beast of a database, but I can just kind of embed that again in our different spaces and use it the way we want. Similar to Francesco, we have like a marketing promotion calendar that's got, published. I can see appearances that we've done, like podcast interviews that we've done and that sort of thing. We can also track it on a calendar if we want. Some of the resources stuff are pretty handy. Like, I have a swipe file that is, anytime I'm cruising the internet and I'm like, wow, that's a great example of a sales page, that's a great example of an email, I will just add that to my swipe file. And then what I'll do is I'll show you one of my client templates. I'll show you guys what my so I have this strategic roadmap project that I do. And so when I'm on the phone with a client and I know I'm going to pitch them on this document, what I'll do is say, create new roadmap pitch. That opens up. And so I replace that, hey, client, I put their information in there. I give a little bit of an overview here of what the project was. And then this is kind of a standardized document that outlines my process. And then I've got this embedded case studies area too, and I can actually filter that by only show things that are tagged with online courses, or only show things that are tagged with marketing and that sort of thing. So that way, when I send this document to someone, they're only seeing case studies that are really relevant to them, and they can click and open these and see much more detail about what that's tagged with, what the services provided were, what the tech that I use, the URL, they can jump in and check that out. And then I have a more of a free form kind of case study below where they can see all the things that were done there. So that's made providing a proposal really quickly after a call so helpful. So I'll move that into the client's project database, and I'll just share that with them and keep that sort of public access. Not sure if I saw a couple questions pop up. I don't know if we want to wait till after, but that's been one of the most useful business cases that's really, really been helpful for me as of late. The other one is the food and meal prep. Some of you might have seen that. I got super excited about that. I shared that in the Facebook group, and I made a YouTube video about that. But I basically got this planning table and then all of these recipes in there. So we do our meal planning every Sunday, and I can mention all of these posts in here, and then I know exactly what groceries I need. Here's an example of this master groceries database, and I can say, I know we need carrots, broccoli, whatever, and then on my phone I have it set to only show the need now, and that will always, be right there on the phone, and I know exactly what we need. It has been life changer. Like, this has just been one of the most fun use cases for me of really, really saving time. And then I can also duplicate, like, let's say we had a plan that worked really well for us. I can actually duplicate that. So I can check out any of these weekly plans, open it up, and I can see what I basically re-embed the same database but filtered, right? So just that ability to refine different views of databases inside of different pages. To me, I think that's one of the strongest use cases for Notion. It kind of works with the way my brain works. Some other ways we use it are we track highlights, like just favorite moments of the day, of the year. And so on a big calendar, we can just see all of our highlights, shopping, entertainment, evidence of awesomeness, like if you ever feel down, track any compliments you get, any testimonials and things like that. Reading and listening. Again, anytime I'm on the internet and I want to read that, but I don't want to be distracted right now, add it to the swipe file, add it to the reading and listening, and then I can track read, to read, favorites, calendar, etc. So everything is just kind of tied together in these interesting ways, because I feel like we don't really have a lot of separation between business and personal. Like, it's just everything is kind of intertwined, and the ability to store all sorts of different types of data but have them be able to speak together in ways that make sense for us has been super, super helpful. So that's a basic overview of how I use it. I start here in the dashboard every day, and then I do my weekly agenda, plot all the meetings and sort of the obligations for the week. What are the outcomes that I want to have for this week? Get them plotted in there first thing. I have a win the day tracker too that I don't always use, just because I find my journal is the place where I kind of track a lot of that. And then these weekly reviews are kind of a nice chance too to look at, was I super effective? Was I focused? And I try to just choose an image that to me represents what that week felt like. And that's been really fun. So yeah, happy to elaborate on any of that or show any, go deeper into some of these. Some of these are databases, some of them are pages. I can track conferences, speaking engagements, things like that.
All right. Thank you. We have people just falling all over themselves in the chat with how awesome that is, Marie. So great job. Also, like a little housekeeping detail. My dog Simon is in the background chewing on a bone. And I don't want to push the button, and it's not professional, but he's quiet. So we had some really good questions that came in again on in our Q&A. If I can ask you guys that. One of the things for you, Marie, David asked, do your clients have access to that, like that linked database immediately, or how is it that you're sharing that with them?
The way I've gotten around this, I do think there are some complexities when you're sharing projects inside of Notion with collaborators, but I basically have a project that only I have access to, and then I actually, within that project, create a client space, and I give them access to that, and then that way, if Ben and I need to collaborate or chat or have like internal notes, the client doesn't have to see that. They don't have to see any of that chatter behind the scenes. So it's sort of two layers. Our internal planning, and then the client only gets access to that embedded client database, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. Also, quick shout out. I think our fearless leader of the Notion Pros, I think Ben is here, Ben Lang. So if you guys have questions for him, he's in the chat. I hope I'm telling the truth on that. But anyway, say hi to Ben, everybody. He's from Notion. Let's see, another Another good question, this might be good for the whole panel, and this is from Gustav, and I think he worded it really well. Like, how do you avoid the janitorial work that comes with having a complex Notion system? Like sometimes you just put a lot of time into trying to clean things up and, you know, kind of reorganize and make sure that everything is kind of set up correctly.
I feel like since using the para method, that's from Forte Labs, I feel like everything has a place now. Again, like I can archive anything that isn't really relevant right now. Yeah, of course, I'm always tweaking my systems and just making sure that they work for me, but I don't feel like I'm adding junk necessarily to my workspaces. And if I feel like something is not adding, then I can archive it or I can delete it. Like it's just so easy to delete content that isn't really helpful anymore. So I feel like this particular system of having like a micro view and then you're like zooming out to like the bigger view, everything kind of has a place, but I think it takes so long to figure that out. Like, how does your brain work and what do you need and how do you organize information? That I think is the hardest part to figure out. The tool itself, you can bend it to your will, but it's like, how do I process information? And I think you don't necessarily know until you've been playing with it a little bit. So to me, I feel like it's one of the unfortunate things about Notion, and we talked a bit about this, it's just so powerful and so open-ended that if you don't have a system or a way of structuring information that you feel really confident about, it's easy to kind of go down the rabbit hole. But I just find that para method, you can Google it. I think it's from Praxis or Forte Labs. Tiago Forte is the guy that wrote that article. And I honestly review it like once a week because it's just so helpful for me personally, just organizing projects, areas, resources, archives. Everything should kind of fit into one of those categories, and the rest is it's easy to make decisions, I think, after that.
I have something to add there, if you don't mind. So we use Notion across 15 people worldwide. And so as our team has grown, our Notion space has grown. And as a perfectionist, so has my anxiety around people putting things in the right place. So a recommendation to everyone is, don't be afraid to let some of it go. Especially if you share a Notion space with other people, you have to remember that they're using it for their objectives as well. And so giving them the space to organize things that make sense best to them usually is more productive than if you tarnish their area based on how you might need it. So, that's been a good learning for me over the past year is enabling folks within our team to utilize spaces within our Notion effectively. However, giving them the best practices and giving them advice if they ask for it, but remembering that, they do own those pages, they do own those processes, and letting them go. So
that's great advice.
I was going to say, I had a question for Marie. Great setup, by the way. I absolutely love it. I think it's really, really good. We're going to have you on the YouTube for sure.
Oh, I'd be honored.
Yeah, it's really fantastic. On the dashboard that you had,
yeah.
Down where you've written guidelines, is that that's not a call out, is it? How have you built that?
Okay, so I learned this. Okay, so if you make a toggle,
okay,
and then let's say thing 1. Okay, and if I make this toggle, this is super nerdy. If I put this inside the toggle and then delete, you can actually delete the toggle, but still have like a...
that's really nice, yeah.
It's simple, but it's kind of faking, a functionality that they didn't have. I saw that in a YouTube video. I can't take credit for that one.
No, that's really good. I haven't actually noticed that before.
Just kind of...
That's the sort of stuff you can talk about and get away with it in this community, isn't it?
Exactly.
Else, anywhere else you look mental. No, that's really good setup. Thank you for that.
For sure,
really
yeah.
Marie, thank you so much for sharing all of this. I actually have a question for you as well.
For sure.
We're started exploring granting access to customers, some of our end users, on documents that we're scoping out for our product, and that's actually something I'll dive into in a second. But I've noticed when I share even a specific individual on a page that might be deeply buried in our Notion, they become available for you to tag in any other page. And so let's say that I have page A that's completely separate from page B where my customers might live. But I and then those customers only have access to that individual page on page B.
Yep.
And page A is completely private to people with our email addresses. If I accidentally tag person on page A, will they see that notification even though they're not shared?
I'm not sure. To be honest, most of my current clients, I haven't invited into Notion. Most of them have had their own Asana accounts. And I'm like, that's nice. You can use your Asana, but I'm going to manage all of my tasks inside of Notion. But my partner has had to deal with that where he has had to create these collaborative spaces. So I can't really speak to that. I haven't had clients where they've had to be tagging me and that sort of thing. So I don't really know.
If anyone has done any testing on this, let me know, because that's definitely something that can really unlock some of our own productivity. We'd love to find out.
Great. I'm checking my watch the old-fashioned way. Can I just throw out a couple more questions because people are so eager to hear what you guys have to say. I guess this would be a quick one for Marie. Do you also use a physical planner?
I do not.
Okay.
This whole Notion thing started because I had my mouse over the buy button for some ridiculously expensive planner. And I've tried so many different planners, but I just hated that my data lived and thoughts and kind of different types of information lived in so many different places. So used to use Evernote, Asana, paper planner, and it just felt so messy. So I basically designed this weekly agenda to look the best of what I was looking for in a planner. So, and the fact that I can, if I wanted to, I could drag this into my tasks here, it's just so flexible. It's ridiculous to me. Paper, I can't even imagine anymore. So I'm definitely fully digital on this stuff now.
Good. All right. And sorry to all you guys listening. I know there's millions of great questions and we need to keep buzzing forward, but maybe we'll have time at the end to kind of get back to them. And I can't wait to show you what Carson has to say. So thanks a bunch, Marie. And we will turn it over to Carson in the seat of power.
Alrighty, thank you so much. Definitely some tough facts to follow. Thanks, Francesco, for diving in. Marie, your space again is really incredible. Hopefully we can share some interesting stuff for everybody else. In an effort to make this as valuable as possible for everyone, I thought I'd do the least amount of prep that I could in actually tweaking it. And I want to showcase our company Notion as we use it. So you're stepping into our house. Apologies if things are a little messy, but I wanted to give you some insight on how a remote team really works within Notion. There's a few things that I've changed out because we have some sensitive customer information here, but I'd be happy to dive in further on anything that we might have here. So a little bit about us and how we work. So my name's, I work at Arcade, which we turn KPIs for businesses into fun, exciting contests meant to motivate everyone. So our app sits in retail stores and other sales groups, and we make contests or out of any kind of objective or goal that a team might have. Our team is split worldwide. We have about 8 folks here in Dallas in the United States, and then our technical team of about 5 or 6, including a contractor, work in Melbourne, Australia. And so embracing remote-based work lifestyles has been a learning experience for us, and the more we pour into a digital method of working together, the more productive we've been as a group. So if you have any questions beyond this conversation, I am available on Twitter at Carson Jones. And then you can also email me directly. Carson@workplacearcade.com is my work and personal email at this point. And I'd love to help you out with any type of Notion question you might have. Anyway, so how do we use Notion? And so when we think about product development, there's so many different methodologies out there. And I hate to say that we're just another flavor of Agile, but we definitely don't subscribe to a particular project mindset. It's really interesting to see the kinds of results that Marie and others get from having a very very particular method of organizing information, but that really speaks to how we are and how we are as a team, and being a startup company, knowing that our processes are constantly changing as we evolve, as we pivot, and as we grow. And so one thing that Notion has made really incredible for us is learning how to make our process fit the problems that we're solving and not vice versa. And so what you're seeing here is an iteration since maybe the 8th iteration since 2017 when we first started on Notion. Anyway, so I'm going to step through a bit of that. If there's anything that's really interesting to you, feel free to let us know. So it all starts with the roadmap, and as we go through and interview our customers, or we're talking with our different customers, our different prospective customers, or we're working through any kind of customer interview, we're making note of feedback that we need to have on the roadmap. And a lot of this is influenced just from the internal conversations that we might have. But we put things up into these scope documents here. And these scope documents are just ways of collaborating around features that we need to put into the product. One that we're working on right now is this idea of being able to send out communications or chats almost through Slack in an individual one-off basis, kind of like email. And as we decide that this is something that we want to go tackle, we bring it into what we call an epic. And these epic pages start with, collaborating around the design, actually evaluating each of the different features that need to be in there, and putting all of it on the table as like the bit of the project that we need to shape and go get done. This is the kind of document that I was alluding to, by the way, that we're experimenting sharing with customers. So actually getting them involved and seeing, hey, these are the objectives that we're trying to solve. These are the ways in which we're brainstorming to go get them done. What do you think about them? And if anything, it's been a really good tool to open up conversations with some of the champions within our customers as ways like to help them influence our product development, and also as a way to get feedback before we invest a lot of time actually writing code. Going back up a step, that's a lot of how we organize all of our information. Is we take any kind of project or objective that we're trying to achieve, and we distill them into these different epics. And so these are our raw epics that we're working through right now, which might not make a lot of sense, but that's okay. They didn't make a lot of sense for us, and hopefully they're features that our customers and our users will love. Inside each epic is essentially just a list or a filter of different product projects that we're working on. So you can think of the epic kind of like as the overall goal, and the product project as being the individual task or a composition of multiple tasks that make up that epic. And so what we're looking at here is like our actual working board that myself, our engineers, and our designer collaborate on getting features out the door. You'll see here inside video sharing, for example, that it's related to the enterprise epic. It's related to an enterprise customer that we just picked up. And we work through different iterations of feedback and progress together as a team. This is a tip that we've recently adopted that I wanted to share with everybody, is that these Notion cards, especially as you work towards it together, can become extremely robust and filled with tons of information. And so if you miss a day of work or you come back into it, it's hard to contextualize like when did this activity happen, or when did this progress go forth. And so nesting things as they progress into these feedback tabs has been very helpful for us in order to like help make this card useful for everyone. We have conversations around these different projects inside the discussion board. Another tip that we've picked up that's been really helpful for us is to make use of the resolve button. If you let conversations go on and on inside this comment box, then it becomes contextual, like it becomes really impossible to contextualize like what actually needs my attention here. And so we heavily make use of the resolution button. As we create projects, we map out when we want them to be done in a release. And so we group a bunch of different projects into about a monthly cycle. And this is where here we say we're more of a flavor of agile. We're not super specific in terms of what we need to get out when. We try to focus on when can we deliver the most value in blocks of time. And so as we organize information, as we organize projects as they come into completion, we anchor them together inside releases. And since we have an iOS and Android version of the application, we have a hard stop around delivery because we have to push out what's called a binary to the app stores. And so that makes organizing releases a little easier. Anyway, when we talked earlier about distilling information into a particular card, this is what's called an inline linked database. And so this is a version of the projects document inside of the release page, but it's filtered to only contain projects with that release. And so this makes it super simple for our new VP of marketing, for instance, to hop in and see what's actually coming down the pipe. What do I need to write documentation for? What do I need to write announcements for towards our customer base or on social, etc. And so this helps organize that information in an area. I saw a question earlier about like favoring a Kanban versus a list, and I actually have an answer for that. For someone like myself, I have to get a good grasp around like what is everything we're working on and how do decisions we make as a product team affect sales, and how do they affect marketing, and how do they affect our success team. And so for me, I much prefer lists because I can grasp a whole bunch of information all at once. But for our team themselves, they actually prefer board views. And so making use of the different types of views we have as a group make understanding where things are and understanding who's blocking whom very easy. You'll notice that we don't actually make use of a whole bunch of different statuses here, and that comes again from the many iterations that we've done as a team. Our product projects board used to have 15 columns, and there was one for status, one for complexity, one for area of the application. And what we found is like, as we've evolved, we've just pruned away at a lot of that. Another bit of tip that I wanted to point out is I constantly will actually export this page to Markdown, and through Markdown you can get a CSV export of the table itself. So if you're ever thinking about pruning away a lot of like quote unquote the fat of your projects or the way you've organized things, Notion makes it extremely easy to save, and in case you mess up, you can come back to that data later. Coming back into the demo of our account so far, because I know we have a bunch of questions here. Some other things that we do inside Notion, which are really great, is we use it as a CRM internally. So our sales team uses this CRM called Pipedrive, but once that customer actually signs a contract or agrees to a trial with us, we're moving and managing that relationship all into Notion. So I've created a fake dummy board of what this might look like and some of the things that we do as a group to help us understand who it is we have. The first thing is we make use of the icon on Notion, and I think if you buy into using emojis in Notion, then it makes the experience a little bit more enjoyable. But we use that as a status for ourselves. And I'll explain why this is important in a second. So for customers that we currently have that are happy, they get green hearts. For hot opportunities that are trialing our product, they get fires. You see a big account might have a volcano. For people that are prospects and we need to know about it as a success team to get their account set up, they're fingers crossed. And then unfortunately with anyone that's churned, they're either a broken or a black heart. What makes this really interesting in putting the status embedded along with this is that when you use a relation property inside Notion, you can make use of requests that this user might have, and you can see in line what that customer might mean. So this is an example of how we're actually logging support requests, and this is a real screenshot from our current support board. We're taking any Zendesk request that comes in, and our success reps are putting this in here in order to translate needs back to our tech team. And we do that for two reasons, and the one reason is that we don't want to pay for user accounts for Zendesk because their user pricing is not very fair for startups. But the number two reason is we're still waiting on the API. Once we can API support requests directly into Notion, then we can get rid of Zendesk altogether. Sorry for my feature request plug there, folks. That's just something I'm really looking forward to. Anyway, as you can see here, back on the idea of using the icon as status, you can see who the request came from directly, and we can get a good sense of, is this for a trial versus is this for an existing customer? And that helps us evaluate, the severity and the priority that should be given to fulfilling support requests, which has been really interesting, as you can see here. Anyway, coming back into other things that we do within our Notion board is we look at how can we make a transparent organization across things that we do. And so we subscribe to this idea of an issues list. Teams might call it whatever it might be. We call them fires, issues, things that us as a leadership group have to pay attention to. And so as leadership, when we're meeting each week, we make sure that we log these down in a public space so that anybody that within the team can go and see what the leadership group is paying attention to or the issues amongst the business that we might have. We really try not to overwhelm it with too many statuses here, outside of just identifying if this is something that we can solve right away or if this is an ongoing thing that we might have. And inside this, we make heavily use of reminders and tasks across our leadership team in order to be able to differentiate or disseminate who needs to do what by the next time we chat about it. The final thing is, like, some other things that we do use Notion for that I won't take too much more time to dive into here is that we use it for recruiting. So we're not big enough, I think, to make use of any type of serious recruiting tools. And so we've set up and scaffolded boards to track both candidates and interviews that we're doing. And especially because we're a remote team, this makes it really good to share notes, resumes, or any details about people that we're interviewing for positions that we need to fill. And we also do all of our marketing or design projects. Anything that requires someone else's attention, we try to put into these project-based boards, like I shared with the product team particularly. That way we can collaborate and know status of those things. Anyway, that's a lot of how we use Notion Arcade. We've been extremely fortunate to have found a tool that fits both our evolving process and our needs of helping remotely. So thanks for watching.
It's fantastic, Carson. Thanks.
That's awesome.
And for all of you guys, probably nobody else knows this, but I'd asked Carson to maybe jump in and present, and he had to, do a lot of work to get this set up just so he wasn't hiding sensitive information. So we really appreciate it, and it was absolutely worth it. And you also started this little pep rally on the side in the chat about the API. So
I'm really supportive of the Notion team and how they get this right. And I know that there's so many different use cases within the tool, so it makes sense. But, I think as a group or as a community, the more we can actually articulate the specific things that we need done for the API, coming from a product development team, I know will help make their job easier. So, be sure to sound off on like how you would use it and what spaces you would connect to and how that would work.
Good. Also, just a personal request, if you could come to all of our companies that are having a hard time switching over to Notion, that would be a great service to offer. I think this is a great use case and a good example. Can I jump into some questions here? Is everybody doing okay? We have about 5 minutes. Let's see. Can we, Carson, for example, what you have going on here? I know it'd be hard to answer, but like how many hours is it taking you to build up this system? Let's say you're starting with a new blank page. Yeah, that's a hard question to ask, but I think everybody's really curious because everything is so complex, and that's why we love it.
Absolutely. So it's worth noting that like when I joined the Arcade team was about May in 2017, and before joining I worked for a CTO that was very diligent about logging everything into our Atlassian Confluence wiki. If you've ever used that tool, you know exactly why you would want to switch to Notion. The ease of use is just not there. The friendliness and history is just not there. But what he did show me was the power of creating a team that cares about logging their things in a central place. And he went as far as for Christmas one year, he bought everyone a shirt that said, "Let me wiki that for you." And I think it was just to inspire like, hey, we need to have this logged. If any kind of process or question about our business needs to go into the tool that we all share and utilize. So when I joined the Arcade team, they were moving fast, they were breaking things, and we didn't have anything written down. And so, as employee number 4, it was a lot of extracting it out of our co-founders' heads and getting it onto paper at least to get it started. And so I don't want to say it's taken 2 years of like countless nights getting to this point, but it has. But the point remains that like you have to start and you have to just give it a shot. Coming back to the first thing I said, think about what you're trying to achieve and the problems that you might be facing or the goals that you have amongst your group, and utilize putting it down first as a means to getting there, right? Iterating on top of it comes every time you make a new addition or you make a change. You might realize that adding a status or a new property on a table will help you organize this information a little easier down the line. Or removing it now might actually make it easier for other people to understand or adopt. So I would say that I'll leave you with, I don't know if I've spent a lot of targeted time around Notion at any given point. But what I have done is like anytime I need to actually utilize Notion, I make sure to either clean up or brush up any mess that I might have made or make an iteration on something that I might find helpful for the rest of the team.
Yeah, great. That's a great question, or a great answer. Probably the last question we can get out there. We promise we'll do this again for you guys, but a lot of people are asking about, we have so much of our lives in Notion, really important things. What is the backup strategy to make us feel more comfortable? Does anybody have any thoughts on that? The fear of losing everything.
I'm happy to take this one. So if you head to the root space of any page within Notion, the export tab is now, you can actually export all subsequent pages that are underneath it. And that exports to Markdown, and Markdown is friendly with pretty much any text editor worth its chops in 2019. So that's at least a really great way to store all of the information that's there. I don't have a specific routine, but I very well, probably using the para method now that Marie's giving me insight, schedule some kind of task to remind myself to be able to, or to actually go export my info. On the idea of performance, I will note that in getting this set up for you all today, I tried to clone over the product table in order to, whittle it down into something that might be a little bit more useful. And it said that it was unable to duplicate because we have over 5,000 rows. So the person asking about performance, we still can utilize 5,000 rows. It loads in relatively very snappy time. It exports in a relatively snappy time. The only limitation when you get to that much information buried within the page is that you can't duplicate it. But you can export it out really well. So, make use of that export as Markdown or CSV feature.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Carson. And like their exporting abilities are really good. And I think Steve mentioned there in the chat, like you can always back those up to a cloud service. But I think a lot of the time the worry is that when you join a new service like this, it can be quite scary, but almost guarantee it, the majority of people had the same problem with Evernote when they were in their first year of using Evernote. It's quite scary putting all your stuff into one place, and Notion is the exact same, I think.
All right, great. Hey, just to honor everybody's time, you guys have been awesome. It's 1 o'clock in Colorado, and I know everybody hates to go. I think this could be a discussion that could go on and on forever, and I'm sure some of us have to get to work, and others of us need to go to bed. So I appreciate you guys so much. This was amazing. Appreciate everybody that came and joined, everybody that answered questions. We love you all, and I'm going to put a link in there, and if you want to kind of stay in the loop and you haven't filled out a form yet, please do that, and we'll have more things coming up. Also, Marie has a webinar coming up. I'm going to put it in the email that's coming out soon, and we're going to try to promote the heck out of people. I think that's all for now. Any parting shots for you guys?
I'm happy to share templates too if you guys saw anything that's useful. Like, don't hesitate to reach out or at me on Twitter. I'm always happy to share templates.
Great.
Just want to say, Steph, thanks so much for organizing this, for everyone for attending and letting us ramble around this tool that has kind of changed our lives. If you have any questions, again, I'm Carson at workplacearcade.com. Happy to answer anything regarding Notion or product management, anything or remote teams, anything where I can help.
Yeah, thanks, Steph, again for having us. If anybody has any questions or wants to share their setup or anything, just put it in the Facebook group, because that's always a really good place for all these sort of conversations. And yeah, thanks for hosting this. It's fantastic.
Welcome. Thanks, everyone. We will see you soon. Enjoy the rest of it. All right. Bye.